there's two parts of content. There's storytelling and there's science. So we've automated the science piece.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Apply Tech series. I'm your host, Alexander Ferguson, and I'm excited for our discussion today. This episode is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of customer stories at TerraLeap.io. My guest today, joining me, I'm very excited, is Christopher Day, who's based in Indianapolis. He's the co-founder and CEO at DemandJump. Welcome, Christopher. Good to have you on.
Thank you, Alexander. Excited to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Now, DemandJump is a marketing strategy platform that powers page one rankings. Now, we're going to dig into what this really means, but let's start very high level. I mean, Christopher, what's the problem that you guys set out to solve?
Yep. So what we set to solve very high level is the internet was built for people to find any product, service, or information, right? You and I, as a consumer, as a customer, as a buyer, we think it's all the same thing. It's for people to find any given product, service, or information. It was not built for the inverse of that. How does that product, service, or information show up for the people? That is the big gap in marketing today. And that's what DemandJump was built to solve, is to save marketers 70, 80% of their time and take them from having to guess and take him to knowing exactly what to do that will drive those results their CEO wants. And quite frankly, the marketer wants, right?
I mean, every marketer, well, every business needs to get eyeballs on what they have to offer. And everyone has moved to the internet to find their answers, their solutions, what they're looking for. And that's what you're trying to play in is helping connect the marketers to say, I mean, these people are searching for X, so you should really be creating content around this if obviously whatever this is, what said topic relates to your product. So let's give some real world examples. It's always helpful to bring it out of the cloud to reality. Give me an analogy or one of your customers of how that works.
I love it. I'll give you a B2C and a B2B example. In B2C, let's say I manufacture lipstick, right? And I want people who want to buy lipstick, I want them to find me when they're looking for lipstick. The most powerful question in the world, this data was 6 months ago, and somebody may be answering this as of now, but the most powerful question in the world for lipstick is, what does lipstick stand for? Not one of the manufacturers was answering that question, not one. And so that's an example. Or let's take CRM, right? That's a very common term. One of the most critical questions that people are asking are, what are the types of CRM? I never would have guessed that that's a question that ranks in the top 5, and neither did our customer. And they started writing about, and our platform tells them exactly how to write it. They started writing about what are the types of CRM. First page rankings for CRM skyrocketed. So here's what marketers do today. And it's not, by the way, this is not, if there's any marketers, hopefully there's lots of marketers listening to this. It's not your fault, right? The deck is stacked against the marketer because the marketer can't see, touch, and feel what they're trying to solve for, right? And that's how to show up along the customer journey. And so,
I mean, there's been a lot of tools that have come up over time. You have Google, which obviously provides their keyword planner, and there's WordStream and other things. I mean, how does your product approach this differently than what's already existed?
Yeah, great question. So there are lots of tools out there, right? And there's been lots of people said, oh, we've solved SEO, we've solved, you hack this, you backlink that, et cetera, et cetera. It's all garbage. The reason it's garbage is a keyword in of itself is not relevant. What is relevant is a keyword and how it's connected throughout the network around a given topic. So all keywords are not created equal, right? So what we've discovered is this idea of networks. The internet is a massive network. It's a massive network of networks, right? Any given topic has a network within the internet itself, right? So we're not the first ones to think of the concept of a network. What's LinkedIn? It's a network. It's a network of people and how they're connected to each other. What's Facebook? Same thing. It's a network. It's a network of people and how they're connected to each other. So our thought, I just got chills. I get so excited about this. So our thought process was, we think there's a lot of similarities between the human brain and the internet, right? What's the brain? It's a network as well. So what if we could take all of that data, and then everybody has access to data, but the data still requires the marketer. If I go into some of these popular SEO tools out there that we all know, and I go look at data, and I get a big list of keywords or phrases, I get all kinds of crap, right? And if I'm a sophisticated marketer, I download all that into a spreadsheet and I try to organize it and figure out, what I'm going to do. The marketer still has to determine how they're going to execute against that keyword. Well, by marketing, you'll have some success by default. But if I knew as a marketer around any given topic, what is the network around that topic for the words and the questions and the searches, whether they're short tail, long tail, and how they relate to each other, and then unwound that network for what are the most connected phrases, keywords, questions, then I know what the most important questions or keywords to focus on that are connected the most throughout the entire network. And if I know that, and I write content, which we automate, by the way, the content creation of that, or I should say the content brief. If I write my content now that's aligned to the most powerful and important questions or keyword phrases, to what people are actually asking, because the internet was built for people, not for me as a marketer, then I will be more aligned and connected to that organic customer journey than anybody else. And I will get pushed up and served on page one.
So I'm curious to dig into this a little bit more on two sides of it, of the technology, of how it works. I mean, you developed this, I think 5 years ago is when you began, and I'm sure it's morphed and continued to evolve since then. One side of the technology is identifying these connections, these patterns, these networks, as you described. And the other piece is, you said, automating the creation. I'm curious about this, the creation of the brief of here's what you should do. So let's look at each one. How did you create, what's the technology behind this?
So we have a patent that was awarded, I think, in May of last year. And that's the main concept or theory that we use. And there's literally probably 100 algorithms past that on how we actually execute it. But it's how do we do it at a high level? It is math so you enter a topic. So that topic could be lipstick, or it could be customer success software. You enter that topic, you press a button, and the platform goes out and collects all of the data around that keyword phrase. And we keep spawning searches and keep spawning until we see a diminishing return. We take all of that data then, and what's a common, I'll use the word cluster, maybe. We cluster that data together to understand which words are more connected to the next word than others. And it basically, if you think about a sphere, like a graph, like the internet's a graph, it's a spider web, right? And so if you think, remember those kids' toys that you can kind of open up and it's like a sphere, right? And there's these connection points that connect this sphere. Well, those connection points, those are the words or the questions that are more important than the next grouping before you get to the next most powerful question or group of words. And so that's the first step of the platform, is it maps that out automatically.
It's the combo of first identifying, going to the sources. You probably have all the API connections to where those search terms are that gets researched. And then you build out the graph, and then it's really the correlation, that math of research of figuring out what words are most correlated with the others. Because what you're stating is, I mean, a lot of the tools and where people's focus is just looking at the keywords, putting it into their own spreadsheet, and then having to figure out manually, what should I focus on? what you're doing is then another layer of the correlation between the term, the words and terms to figure out the best focus. Did I get that right?
That's basically right. Because
Right.
what a marketer typically does today is they look at a keyword, they'll say, okay, I need to write about, CRM. Well, what they will do is they will write about CRM through the lens of their product
Mm-hmm.
and their domain expertise. Because if they're in the business of a CRM solution, they're probably pretty smart people, right? And they know what their product does and they know why they think it's great and all these wonderful things. Nobody cares about that. That's not what people aren't looking for your domain expertise. They're looking for answers to their questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's flipping everything on its head to say, write it through the lens of the questions and the pain that your target market's having and feeling and thinking versus your domain expertise.
So it still does require you as a marketer to know what the pain is of the customer so that you can work backwards. I mean, like how would a marketer know that the answers I'm getting back is what my customers are searching for versus other people that I don't care about?
So because those people, so I'll give you an example of me, personally me, right? I'm the CEO of a SaaS company. And a lot of marketers would argue that, well, the CEO of a SaaS company isn't going to search for what are the most important SaaS metrics. I search for that all the time. I'm always refreshing myself. I'm always replenishing my knowledge, right? And so, and I'm responsible for a lot of the purchases we make in the company, right? Or I'm working with the direct reports who are buying those things. And we're always collaborating and looking at what are the latest things. So we are always, I think most people are, if they really step back and think about it, even though they're an expert in whatever that field is, they're Googling periodically and consistently very basic questions. And so I don't know if I surveyed you on a specific topic, humans lie in surveys, quote unquote, right? Or if the survey is not structured properly, you're going to get data that's not helpful. But when your brain thinks of something and you put your fingertips on a keyboard and you type out a phrase or a keyword or a question, that is your pain. That's what you're really thinking about. And so if we can capture all that data, right, and we don't know it's you individually, right? But if we can capture that data at the macro level, then we know what your pain is. We know what that target market's pain is because those are the questions they're asking every single day. So answer those questions. Right. And then you put that content on your product page. Mm-hmm. And so you're bringing them to your domain expertise by default. But you got to get them there.
It's being able to finally know what they're writing for, that you can create content and then that you are able to show up for it. And it's looking at the entire web, not just assuming this is probably what they're searching for. Coming back to the beginning, where is the starting point that kicks off the rest of this engine? What is a marketer typing in? The
keyword of the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's if I sell calculators, I'm going to enter in calculator. If I sell something around content creation, I would do content creation or content strategy or content marketing or content execution. If I sell CRM, I would do CRM or customer relationship management. Or if I sell,
continue to do the research. And the biggest thing is that you could run this multiple times, and over time, as the searches change, you would be getting different results to be able to create new content on.
100% correct, because what we see in the data is it changes 22%. That's a huge number, massive number.
Over what period of time are you seeing that change happen?
Every year.
Every year. Wow, 22%.
So even a few percentage points is a massive. So our customers run these, we call them insight reports. So they run these for their mission critical topics. They run these at least once a month, and we refresh them depending on the package level. We refresh them every week, and you will see some changes week over week, month over month.
And now let's look at the next piece. So you put in a term, you've found out all these amazing data points that all connect, and you've given strings of questions that your customers are writing. How have you automated the briefs of, all right, this is what exactly you should write about?
Yep. So you enter the topic, you press a button, it takes 10 minutes to map out the world. When that's complete, then I go look at, let's say I go to the questions first, and I'm gonna say, okay, what are the most important questions that I have to align to rank on page 1? So I go to the first question, the most important question, and I click another button, and it pulls in the data that is most closely connected to that question and puts it into a content brief, or think of it as an outline format that says, if you're going to answer this question, you need to include these things, because that's what the search engines are expecting to be included because they're the most connected to that question. So when I answer that question, I'm including a very specific and strategic set of answers and sub-questions to that question that the search engines will say, this piece of content is tightly aligned to what this person's asking. I'm going to serve that website because that's going to give them a better experience than some random thing that's jammed with keywords.
So you're delivering the main question and a potential answer of how you should approach it, as well as sub-questions connected to it and their answers?
Correct.
And the answers, is it a statement? Is it a paragraph? Is it bullet points? I'm curious of how you generate this, because there's a lot of focus and things happening in the content creation space with AI.
Yes. So you would answer that question with two things. You would answer it with how people are solving that thing. You would solve that with domain expertise, you would answer that question with your domain expertise. But the key is that you include those keywords in questions, that thing that's a sub of the main question. The key is that you're answering that relevant to that next set of keywords.
So you're not providing the answers yet. You're simply providing the questions and the sub questions on which to write content for.
Exactly.
And the keywords to make sure you put in there.
That's great. This is exactly what you should write about in this order. Correct.
Slightly a sidestep here. As an expert in this space, have you seen a lot of the content that's been tech solutions that are coming out? We've actually interviewed a few of them on the series that are using solutions like GPT-3, other things where it's automatically generating content based off of set input. Could you see a world, and are people starting to do this, where, all right, you've got everything now. You've just said, all right, this is what you need to write, and then the AI actually just does the rest of it.
Yeah. So I think two things about that. So number one, we're working on that same thing right now. Here's the scary part for the marketer. If they don't know what they're buying, they might waste a lot of time and energy and effort, because that AI generated content is only as good as the data and the models it's trained on. So meaning, if that's being trained on, and I think if I may have these backwards, but GPT-3, I think you cannot dictate what you want to train, what data you want to train that model on. It just trains it in the internet at large, Wikipedia, whatever, right? That will create a garbage in, garbage out piece of content that, I don't know, you might get some ranking out of it, but it will not rank very well on page 1. It won't. Why? Because it's not trained from the relevant data. It's not trained from the words that are most closely connected to the next set of words throughout the entire network around a given topic. It's being trained on the entire internet,
right, versus
the actual true network around a topic. What's that?
Are we going to get to the point where you're going to be able to train an AI on just the topic that you need to address?
Yes, we're doing it right now. And we're not, I'm not sure
we're rolled out yet.
What's that?
Okay. It's not rolled out yet. You're still working on it.
We've been working on this for 1.5 years.
Wow.
It's very complex. It's not something you just spool up and throw some crap out there. So yeah, we've been working on it for 1.5 years. I think we will have, for sure, our V1 of it. I think we'll definitely have this year. Now, we also don't believe that you would just take a piece of AI created content, and this might be different for product naming conventions, et cetera, but I'm talking about a 500,000, 3,000 word article, piece of content. I don't think you would ever push a button. It creates the AI generated content and you just put it out there and you're happy with it. You would still want to edit that at some level.
But the question is, can we get 80% there?
Oh yeah.
And then we can fine tune.
Yeah.
We're getting closer and closer to a world that is more automated, and in many ways, it can be a good thing. I mean, if it's repetitive and you need the fact of being able to create this graph of insight and connected all the points, how long that would take someone to manually figure out all this, it would be silly.
Well, that's right. And frankly, it's impossible with spreadsheets, right? And sophisticated marketers are using complex spreadsheets. You will never do as well as a network. It just won't happen. There has to be math included.
We're definitely in an age where AI is powerful at providing insight by the data inputs coming. If you know if it's tuned to exactly what you're trying to accomplish, not just, there's no general AI that's going to give you insight on anything yet, but specific solution. But we're getting closer now to where AI can take the next step and provide an outcome of taking that insight and providing a solution. And we're not quite there yet, but I appreciate you sharing that you're actually working on it, and then we can see the first piece coming down.
I think what we have today eliminates 50% of the work up front. Mm-hmm. What we would deliver with the AI generated content would probably get you another, to your point, 80%. I think it would get you another 30% of the way there. That's what we believe. And by the way, if writers are listening to this is not going to put writers out of work at all. It's going to just help them become more efficient. Because what we also believe is there's two parts of content. There's storytelling and there's science. So we've automated the science piece. And you're always going to want to sprinkle the storytelling on top of it.
Solving the storytelling piece for AI is definitely much further away than the science piece.
Absolutely. Yeah,
storytelling is not going to go away from humans for a while. I'm curious on we're getting a little bit into the pontification of technology, which I appreciate sometimes to dig into a little bit. If this technology becomes more and more readily available, every marketer starts to use this, does that diminish then the capability of it? If everyone's able to know what to write on and create content on, does that make it more difficult? Or it's so far away, the likelihood that's going to happen, you don't even think it's something you worry about?
I think it goes back to what's under the hood. This is the scary decision that marketers will have to inform themselves before they make decisions on what they buy in the future. All AI is not created equal, right? So there's no such thing. That's what I love when, there used to be a bunch of companies that started up and they were getting a bunch of funding and they were like automating AI for, various applications. Unless you're, training some robot to make an outlet cover, right? That's 3 inches by 5 inches. Okay. Well, a lot of companies, you could use some standard algorithm to, and put that into a robot and it's going to just stamp those puppies out by the billions, right? Okay. That works. But when it comes to something like content that is so complex and always changing, the math that's used to power what gets produced that you're actually going to execute against, how will you know as a marketer that thing's actually going to rank on page one? It's this is a real stat. 90.63% of web pages and blogs get zero traffic. That's the world of content. So if you and I went to bed tonight and knew that tomorrow when we wake up, 9/10 of our day was going to be a complete waste of time, that would be a real bummer. But that's the reality that marketers and content writers live in. They spend all this time and effort and work in trying to figure out, how do I produce something that's actually going to be seen? It's actually going to drive traffic of our target buyer. That's what they got to be careful of, that they don't buy something that is using some algorithm off the shelf somewhere and being trained off of Wikipedia, because it's never going to work.
You state a few key pieces. The amount of data being created is only increasing. The amount of content, and we've got a lot of content creators, and you're saying 90% of them and never see the light of day, or no one ever actually comes across. So I'm curious, kind of, you're mentioning, be cautious of what solution you choose. I'd love to hear a bit more of DemandJump, of your story, your history of like how you guys got to this point. Because obviously day one, you didn't suddenly turn on and look, now we have an engine, the math works perfectly. What was that journey like? 2015, I believe you started?
Yeah, that's right. No, and you're exactly right. We've made 1,000 mistakes as we've built out math and trying to solve various problems. When we first started the company, we were really more focused on competitive intelligence, and how that applied to several things. It wasn't focused on content at all. And then we started to focus more into paid search and try to understand that better. And then we started thinking about this in terms of kind of networks. And then we got into programmatic. So the same thought process applies to programmatic. So, display ads, right? So people spend billions of dollars. That industry is billions and billions of dollars. And some, big Fortune 500 companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars on programmatic. They're wasting 90% of their money. And I don't know why they keep doing it. And it just makes me sick to my stomach. But the same concept applies. If you understand the network of what gets served to people when they're searching for a thing, well, then you would only run your ads on those sites. There's 2 billion websites on the planet. But if I'm selling eyeglasses, I shouldn't be advertising on 2 billion websites, not even 100 million, not even 10 million. In fact, you know what the real number is? It's like 5,000. But marketers don't know that. And the DSPs and the DMPs don't tell people that. They want to sell all this fancy audience data and blah, 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 and serve it to those people wherever in the heck they are. It's a complete waste of money. They should only serve those ads on the sites where people are in research, evaluation, and decision mode. And when our customers do that, the results are insane. They get similar results to paid search, actually. So that was kind of the evolution. And then we discovered, oh my gosh, can we apply this to content creation?
What year was this, that this progression happened like that?
About 2 years ago, when we discovered this.
Wow.
And so then we're like, oh my gosh, we think this would work. So we had to go do some of the, kind of the messy back end adjustments, right, to math. And then we were kind of doing it manually. So we started applying it to ourselves first. We're like, oh my gosh, we just wrote these pieces of content and bam, they're showing up on the first page everywhere. And so then we went to some customers. We said, hey, will you try this out? We want to see if it works in different verticals, right? Different size companies, startups to Fortune 500, et cetera. People started writing content based on those content briefs. Same thing every time, almost every time. 9 out of 10 times, bam, we get some people who produce a piece of content and it goes straight to the first page literally the next morning, and it stays there. So then we had to productize it, right? And so that took time. And so we really this year we officially focused on this issue starting December of last year, so December of 2020. And that's why we say DemandJump is a marketing strategy platform. Like the most important, what takes the most time in marketing is what's your strategy to try to go get people to see you, get interested in what you're selling, gain their trust, right? And then get them to the point of where they want to talk to a salesperson or click the product button and buy the thing. Like in the B2B world, 70% of those buyers now are doing all of that research and evaluation online, never talking to a salesperson. So if you're not present, you're out of the game, right?
You mentioned we a couple times. Are you the math guy, or you got a math team?
Yeah, no, we have a math team. So I am people often think that I'm a developer or maybe a data scientist or something. I'm a problem solver. I'm a listener. I listen to pain. So I've had 8 companies in different verticals before DemandJump. And every single one of them, we had marketing. We never knew what to do in marketing, right? And it just seemed to me that there had to be a better way to solve that. I don't think it was possible to solve it probably until maybe 10 years ago. We didn't have computational power, right? And you got to find people who are open to looking at math in a different way and how to apply to these problems. And we didn't have the database structures, right? Those are kind of the 3 legs of the stool that we're missing. Right. AI is not new. AI has been here forever. We just couldn't commercialize it. These algorithms, this math, some of this math is centuries old, literally centuries old, right? If not decades. We could just never put it into, we never commercialize it because of computational power and database structure.
So what it needs is problem solvers to come along and take said computational algorithms, the power, the computational power, and then productize it to actually solve a problem. So at the beginning, what I'm for your founding piece of who was your co-founders? Like, how did you meet that team to get it started?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sean Schwegman is my co-founder, and Sean was he was a CTO initially and then became the CMO for Overstock.com.
Huh?
And so Sean is just a data maniac, right? And we both kind of think the same way. Like there's nothing that we do that we shouldn't be open to challenging doing it differently so we can be better, right? That's how we think.
Yeah.
And so what Sean did at Overstock to really help power their growth was he cared more about data outside his four walls than he cared about their internal data. That was one of the big legs of the stool that really powered their growth, is they understood and knew exactly where their competitors were getting their traffic, and they would just pounce on it and just redirect it to them.
Wow.
And so the thought process was, could we kind of productize that concept with all these different channels of marketing? And so that's what we set out to do. So then just used our relationships and networks and friends of friends to find the data scientists and the machine learning engineers and the front engineers, the full stacks, the back ends, the data architects, et cetera. And, you just kind of one person equals two and two equals four, and you get 10. And so
what's the team like today?
36 people.
Nice. And have you funding it from the beginning or bootstrapped, or how did you approach this?
So we funded it close to the first year ourselves and doing hypothesis and thesis work with a few select customers. And then late in 2015, we brought on our first round of seed funding and then have gone through several rounds, since. So hopefully we'll be ready to start our Series B here this year.
Nice. And if anything, it's the culmination of slowly honing in. It sounds like you've got the math, you figure out the exact, and that's part of your role of figuring out whose problem are we solving and how can we solve the best way and productize it. If you look ahead then, looking forward, what are you most excited about as far as the roadmap if you're looking out, 2-3 years from now?
Yeah. So I'm really excited about I want DemandJump to be synonymous with Kleenex. Like when people think content, they think DemandJump. So if you're starting a business, you got to do a few things, right? You got to go get a website, and you're probably going to subscribe to some, Google technology, Google ads, or whatever it might be. And you got to get DemandJump.
Wow. Simple. And so you want it to be available not just for enterprise or mid-market, but also small businesses?
Yeah, and it is today. So we have a PLG hybrid go-to-market strategy. And so I believe the world changed forever in 2016 when it comes to SaaS companies and how they go to market. And that's product-led growth. And so now there's variations of product-led growth, right? So it doesn't mean everything's worth 10 cents and then you expand from there necessarily. So our go-to-market strategy is, I want you to get super high value for low cost. Because our biggest competitor, quite frankly, is status quo. It's people who are doing what they do and they're not getting fired for it yet. And they have some nasty conversations, but they're willing to have those and get in trouble for not producing quite like they should be, maybe. And like that's our biggest competitor. More and more marketers. If I look at 5 years ago to today, I feel like 5 years ago, kind of 2 out of 10 marketers we would talk to would be like, hell yeah, we're in, right? Today, I think that's closer to 6 or 7 out of 10 are like, oh my gosh, yes, this makes sense. But there's people out there still that are like, I don't know, I just kind of want to do what I do. But if I look ahead, I do believe that we are number one in the world. I'm confident that we are number one in the world at being the best at driving page one rankings with content that is structured correctly. I think we're the best at it. I don't think anybody can touch us right now. I want DemandJump to become synonymous with Kleenex, right? Like when you think content, you think DemandJump. DemandJump equals content. And then We're rolling out a center of excellence that I hope grows to be tens of thousands of agencies on that center of excellence. So today we do business directly with customers, but we also we're growing our agency network fast.
Mhm.
And then the next thing would be that the platform does this already today, but so now I'm creating all this stuff, right? So does it equal close one revenue? Right. So the platform does this today. We just don't talk about it because it gets too complex. And so that's how we grow people in the platform, right? So we just start them off with content, right? Organic alignment to customer journey is the most important thing that any company, Fortune 250 or startup, has to do on day one, right now. It's the most important thing. It drives everything downstream. So now when I start doing that, I see the results. Page one rankings grow exponentially. My traffic grows by 10, 12x, sometimes more. My leads grow by 4 to 6x. And now I see I'm winning more customers. We typically see on average like 3x. And by the way, all that stuff I just did, I decreased my cost per lead by 3x because it's more efficient. And so now I want to measure all that stuff and know what exact piece of content drove close one revenue. We can do that in our platform today.
Attribution has always been, it can be a difficult thing to do, but it is so important. And that's what you're saying. You're also solving and focusing on solving.
Yeah. And we have that today, but we very seldom sell it in a first call to a customer. Very seldom. Sometimes we do, but most, I would say probably 90% of the people we talk to, they want to fix the front end before they start even thinking about measuring the back end, right? Like they know they've got to make this thing more efficient because the CEO's hollering at them, or the CMO's hollering at them, or the CFO's like, I'm going to cut your budget, right? And so they want to fix the front end and start the proof points of, hey, what I'm doing is adding value to the business. And then the other thing we've done is I like to think about Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, right? Like the whole, right? Love connection. So now there's a love connection between sales and marketing, because marketing can drive provable, quantifiable, better quality leads for sales to pick up. So now that relationship's much closer, it's much more collaborative. And so also in our platform, you can connect, whatever you're using, Salesforce, HubSpot, Eloqua, Marketo, whatever you're using, of course, all the Google stuff and blah, 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 the list goes on. But now I can connect all that in one place for the first time, and all that data speaking the same language, and I can truly measure anything I want.
I love it. I love it. It will end here, Christopher. If you look ahead and were to give a prediction of where we're going with content marketing overall, and the technology connected to content marketing, what are we going to see? Not just DemandJump specifically, just content marketing. When you look at how people are searching for, what are we going to see in like 5 years from now, 5, 10 years?
I think it might happen by 5 years. I think there's going to be a lot of pushback on AI generated content, because I think there's going to be a lot of fear involved. So I don't think I would be surprised if we saw that's just commonplace inside of 5 years. It could happen. But I think 10 years from now, people will, I think people will be tapping buttons, right? And have their strategy delivered to them in a much more automated fashion. And those that embrace AI will become indispensable. Like it's job security.
As a marketer,
it's job security, not putting you out of a job. There are still a lot of marketers out there that believe all this AI stuff and automation stuff. Number one, they don't believe it a lot. You'll notice on our website, we don't use AI, right? Because I think people tune out. We don't even use AI. So the term AI, right? And actually, I think a lot of people, when they use the term AI, they're actually doing some rudimentary math, basically, right? Like it's not even AI. Anyways, that's just a personal belief. But I think there's a lot of people, they've been burned so much, right? As companies have tried to figure out new ways of doing things. And there have been a lot of promises made out there, or there's a lot of kind of black hat. Some old companies had some black hat things they were doing, or these hack your way to this, hack your way to that, throw a bunch of backlinks in, and it's going to work, I promise. You can't game the internet. The internet will never be gamed, ever. Never, ever, ever. And there's a lot of people who promise they, have some silver bullet or whatever. There's no such thing. And so, but marketers have been burned by that multiple times. And so I think it will take some time for them to be comfortable with finding that right solution where they can push a button, and 70% of the day that they're pulling their hair out and they're nervous and scared and trying to figure out what to do, replacing that with knowledge and then being able to elevate themselves, right? Become less tactical and more strategic, right? And really navigating this ship in a much more intentional direction.
I love it. Thank you, Christopher, both for sharing the journey that you guys have been on, the problems that you're solving right now with DemandJump and the future of where we are. Marketers need to embrace AI. And even though it probably won't be called AI, the solution of automated marketing is the future. For those that want to learn more, you can head over to demandjump.com. Thanks again, Christopher. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Alexander.
And be sure to subscribe and like to be able to get our next episode. And we'll see you on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.